Okay, so I've got my interior starting to come together. I've got a cloud render that I can use as well. So I want to start putting together some sheets that are going to show all of these views that I've been setting up. And so I've actually made one previously called ground floor print, but I'm going to delete that just so that I can show you that process again. So here I've got a few copies of the ground floor, but I'm going to start with the original ground floor plan. And so before I even think about setting up a sheet, I'm going to start to set up a view that I know I want on one of my sheets. And the floor plan's a good starting point. So by right-clicking on any view, of course, you can go to Duplicate View. And then you've got two options there. I think we've had a bit of a look at this before. Duplicate and then Duplicate with Detailing. Don't worry about Duplicate as dependent. So those should be your only two choices, either Duplicate. If you want to take the text and the annotation away, the other annotation like dimensions away. So here I've drawn some text and dimension. If I choose Duplicate, it'll remove that. If instead I choose Duplicate with Detailing, it'll keep the text and the dimensions. But it's actually a copy, so I can delete the text from my new floor plan and it's going to remain in the original. So that's really what you need to understand about all views in Revit. You have the physical 3D objects and things like reference planes, which are there in your 3D space. And then you have things like text and dimensions that are really overlays on top of each view. It's like a sheet of tracing paper going over your floor plan or something like that, which is a really useful and sensible approach because it allows you to have different graphics in each view but still pull the model elements that you need into each view. Okay, so I've got my copy there that I want to set up now for printing. So I'm going to right click there and go to rename. So I could give it a name like I did before, ground floor print, but this is the name that's going to appear on the sheet, so I'm going to call it ground floor plan. And just know myself that this specific view is the one for the sheet. So it's not really a view for working in, it's going to have a lot of things hidden. So it's not going to be my main ground floor plan for working in, but again, mainly set up for going on my page. So I'm going to start by hiding things just by selecting a reference plane. You can right click, hide in view category. Remember the shortcut for that? It's a really useful shortcut. I'm going to do the same thing now with these elevation symbols. Select one, but instead of going to the right click menu, I'm going to type VH, which is view hide. And so notice that hid all of my elevation symbols. Zooming out, they're all gone. Now, my sections, well, I do want to hide some of them, but I don't want to hide all of them. So I'm going to hide just this one at the bottom. If I right click and then hide in view elements, we'll hide just that section, not all of them. And there's a shortcut for that as well, and it's EH, which is element hide. So VH and EH. And so I can also set graphics that I want, so I could set realistic display if I want to see the hatch patterns. Shaded is sometimes a nice one as well. I maybe don't want to see the people, so I can again hide those, just hiding the whole category. And maybe I don't want to see these things here either, so I can just hide them by element. Also, it's a good idea to get your section lines tidied up, because if they're too long, they'll take up extra room on the page. So I just want to bring those closer into the edge of the plan and just get it organised so that it's ready to go on the page. Doesn't need to be perfect, but you want to get most of these things done just so the plan is roughly the right size to go on your page. So you can see that's much cleaner than the original, which I still have, but I can go back to work in where I can see all those hidden objects. But this one that's tidied up is obviously much cleaner. And so now I'm going to go down to my Sheets section in the project browser. And I've already made some pages before. Just to avoid any confusion, I'm going to delete those as well. Don't be afraid to delete pages. You'll need to make them again, but you're not going to delete any of your design elements. So this page is a blank page. I might delete that as well. So I've got no sheets. And if you start that way, that's perfectly fine. If you delete the initial sheets that you're given, it's not a problem. And then to make new sheets, the easiest way is just to right-click on the sheets all in Project Browser and go to New Sheet. So yeah, so if you get that horrible Autodesk AO sheet, just delete it because you'll never use it. And so there you can see I've got a couple of sheets already loaded, but I'm going to go and load a new one. Clicking on the Load button. And I'm going to go to the Revit library and then title blocks, and you can see there I've got a much larger selection of sheets and pages with title blocks than in the default library. If you go to the default library, it's just got one for each main page size, and they all have the Autodesk logo on them, so they're not much good. Alright, so I might go to this A2 sheet. So I'll do a larger sheet size this time. So A2 and more Pres V1 is what I'm using, but you can use any of those. Click OK. And I've got a basic sheet with a very basic title block. And then if I go back to my project browser, the one thing I didn't show you is that the scale there is already set to 1 to 50. So it's not a bad idea, especially when you're first setting up sheets and viewports for the first time. Set the scale before you try placing it on a page as well. So again, back into my project browser and then back to the Sheets section, and I'm going to double click on the only sheet that I have, the one I've just made, and then scroll back to the floor plan section in the project browser, and I can click and drag to then place that floor plan on my sheet. So it's going to take up a decent part of the page, even at A2. But that's okay. That's the size a 1 to 50 would have to be. And so you can do extra annotation on the page, and that's what you might have been shown with AutoCAD, that you can do lots of annotation on the layout. I don't think it's a great idea with Revit. You can do it. So to add more text here, I could go to Annotate and then click on the text button to just draw text. But it's probably better if you go to the view and do it there. Unlike AutoCAD, it scales it all for you. So you don't have to worry about choosing your scale or anything like that. It just looks at the scale you have in the view. So yeah, so someone's got to play with the size, but I'll show you cropping as well in a minute. That's another thing. So I'm just going to go to the text tool though and just quickly put in some room labels. You should have some text at least to just annotate the spaces. And so I just wanted to show you there, if I change the scale, say if I go to 1 to 100, the text changes automatically. Now, it's not the text that's changing size, really, it's the plan that's changing size when you change the scale. And that's a lot clearer when you go onto your page and change the scale there. So by selecting the viewport, I can just go into Properties and there choose 1 to 100. And so notice how the plan becomes smaller, but the text is exactly the same size. Right, so it's the same height, but the plan becomes bigger or smaller relative to the text. And that's why it appears to become bigger and smaller in the view when you change the scale here. But once you realise that it's, again, the plan that's changing size, it can make it clearer why that's happening. And so that's why I also prefer to do the text in the view, because if you do it on the page, then you've got to go and move your text and adjust it to suit the new scale you've done. And you shouldn't have to do that. The whole point of Revit is to have these things like scales that you can adjust and then everything in that view should update automatically. So I've got really just the one floor plan on this page, and I won't fit much else. And it's nice, people try and squeeze lots into their sheets, I've noticed, but it's not a bad idea to leave white space, so I think that will be enough. I could maybe put a drawing schedule on there at most, would be the only other thing I'd think about putting on, and we'll look at those later anyway, so that might be enough, just having a floor plan. So I'm going to make a new sheet to put some more views on. So just by right clicking on Sheets All in the project browser again, the same as before, new sheet. I've got my title block already loaded on my page, and I can click OK and make a new sheet with the same title block. And so you'll notice in the brief it says, go back and just open it quickly, you need one floor plan 1 to 50, which I've just done, and then another one showing just part of your design at 1 to 20. That's a lot easier than you might think, again, because of the way Revit works, it's set up to do all these things automatically. So I'm going to go to my ground floor plan that I've just created. So maybe I want to do a more detailed plan of this reception counter. So on the View tab, you have callouts just for this purpose. So if I click on callout, all you need to do is click and drag to make a rectangle around the area you want. And that's done it. If I go to callout, ground floor plan callout 1, all I need to do is change the scale. It's gone to 1 to 25, which is a scale that you shouldn't use. So instead, you can set that to 1 to 20, and it's done. That's ready to go on the sheet. I can go back to my page now. Click and drag. Place that on the page. If I go back to the first sheet, notice it's got my call out and it even tells me where it is. So all the referencing's done for you. And that's the beauty of Revit. When you do all the modelling, you can then set up all these views automatically. So I can see then that maybe is not a good shape. I'd maybe want to change that slightly on the page. So just like AutoCAD, you can work effectively in model space when you're on the page. You just need to select your viewport and then click Activate View. And then it's just like your drawing. I could delete things if I want to, and of course I can adjust things like the crop region there, so that's the border around that view. Okay, so then to go back to working on the page, the easiest way is to right click and then choose Deactivate View. And that's like going back to paper space. Okay, so I can of course go through and put all these details in on the title block. That's fairly automatic, so I can just put in, yep, oh, something like that. So some of these things will carry across to the different pages, but the sheet name should be unique. So this will be... Oh yes, so you need to edit the title block. So if you select that page and then go to Edit Family, then I can maybe insert something into here. So if I just go to Insert and then Image, and you can bring in any, or not any, but most image formats. Yep, yep. So I'll have something here. I did have. Where can I maybe? So I've got too many things here, but just find something. Here we go. That'll do. And then, so I'm going to save that as a new file.
Could you say that be like a template?
Yeah, of course, yep. So then, there we go. So we'll just say whatever, just a different name, and then load in the project, and you'll get a warning when you load it back in, telling you it won't place it like another family, but that's absolutely fine. And now I can go to one of the pages and choose this border, and then in the properties panel you can go to your list, find the new name and just choose that, and then the next one do the same thing. So I'll keep all the project information there, but put in the logo.
If our plans are quite large, do you prefer us to change the scale?
Yeah, just do A0, because you're just giving new PDFs, so you can do whatever page size you want. But you can maybe do part plans as well, but no, yours is really big, so yeah, just do A0. If you can get it on, I'd be impressed if you can get it even on A0. On A0, does it fit at 1 to 50? Oh yeah, okay, so try A0. If you can't get it on A0 at 1 to 50, then do it, yeah, then you can do 1 to 100. But yeah, you can always go up to AO, because you do AO presentations a lot in final year anyway, so that's fine. Oh, of course, yes, I'll show you that. So if you select it, then you can of course choose anything from the list here, but if it's not loaded, you just need to go to edit type and then load. No, edit type. Then load, and then browse to find a different title block. So there are a few AO pages there that have title blocks, and then you can add those. Yeah. So that's plan views. Then sections. So you need to have, just going through the list there, so you've got to have just one cross section at 1 to 50. So going back here, so this is going to be the first page, so that's going to be ground floor plan. And I'll change that sheet number to A101. And then I want to have a new sheet for my section, and I'm just going to make sure that's second in the list. So when you change the numbers, that sorts the sheet order. And so, again, just like the plans, you can format your sections, but the sections you probably don't want to duplicate, because if you duplicate a section view, that's going to give you an extra reference in your plan view. So it's just like copying. If I was to use copy here, it's the same idea. So I'd have two section lines, and I don't necessarily want that. So it's similar to plans, but you essentially, when you want a new section for a sheet, would just make a section for that. You wouldn't need to duplicate. And so, and then hide the sections you don't want showing on your sheet. Just hide them in your plan. So similar to the plan, though, I can hide all the things I don't want. So I'm just using VH for that. You don't need to always show all of the levels, so you may want to hide quite a few of those. Usually, you'll often have plenty of levels that are just there for you to work with, but you don't need to show. My section still needs a bit of work, but just do a quick setup there. So think about the length of your levels, so you don't want them to be too long, because they will take up too much page, space on your page. And think about your cropping as well. So I've hidden my crop region. That's the button down the bottom where you have the little crop marks and the light bulb. So that will give you that rectangle, and this will come up in any view, and you can use that to crop away parts of your drawing. And then the same button will hide it again. So I'm just going to bring these in a little bit. All right, so that's almost ready to go on the page. You can try some of the other options. We're going to look at this more with your second project. Things like shadows with sections can be a bit fiddly, but you can make them work well if you know some of the other options. But we'll maybe look at that later. I should have shown you that actually with plans. They can be a bit easier to work with at first. So different things you can try. So it's good to experiment with the graphics. But otherwise, that is almost ready to go on my page. So I'll drag that section across. So it's again at 1 to 50. So it might take up most of the page. I can maybe get a perspective or something on there as well, but it's probably okay if it's by itself if you have a lot of annotation around that. And so just like the floor plan, you can do a call out. So I'd maybe want the stair shown with some more detail, or maybe the platform that I've done at the back there. So I can again just go to the View tab and do call out, click and drag to make a rectangle, and there you can see the reference going over my level, so I can always move that. And so then looking in my sections category, you can see I've got section call out 1. So that can be put onto a sheet just like my plan call out. So this is how you do details essentially. And the graphics there could be different. Instead of having shaded, I could go to fine and maybe just have it hidden line. And if you're wondering how to draw in construction details, we won't do all of this for this project, but just in case you need to for some other things you're doing, you have the tools for that on the Annotate tab. So look, there are more sophisticated and automated ways of doing this, but at first you probably will just need to draw 2D lines for most of your detailing. It's just like AutoCAD. So with detail lines there, you can draw all these different line styles. So it's just like AutoCAD. You've got dashed lines, different line thicknesses there. Okay, so if you're wondering how you do detailing in Revit, this is basically your main tool. So you can draw extra lines in. You can also do the equivalent of hatches. They're called regions. So I can do a solid fill, or you've got some different preset patterns. You can make custom patterns really easily as well. So I'll just do a quick pattern here, just to show you something pretty simple. There we go. Okay, so that could have heavier lines, so I can just go and change those lines to maybe 0.35. Right, so hopefully it'll give you an idea how you do detailing to make the call-outs more presentable and show the information that you need later. But for now, all you need to do is have a call-out so that you know how to do things at different scales. So you need a call-out from your plan, a call-out from your section, and then the axonometric views. So I can probably squeeze one in here, but I'll do the others on a new sheet. So I'll go ahead and make a new sheet for those. So you have the default 3D view, 3D in the curly brackets, the parentheses. So do you remember how to make new versions of that? There are two different methods that kind of do the same thing, but I'll show you both. You can duplicate that view just by right-clicking. You can go to duplicate and then just choose duplicate again. So duplicate view and then just choose duplicate. That works. So you get 3D copy 1, and then I'll right-click and go to rename, and we'll call this AXO 1. So that's showing the whole building. That's kind of useful. So I'll go and place that on a sheet. The sheet I've made, the blank page. And I want that to go after my others, so I'm going to rename that sheet as well and make it number 6, something for now.
You're on an asymmetric view, and then,
Yeah.
so if I go into floor plan, then what
Yeah, no, you don't need to do that. So you just duplicate the 3D view to make a new one. So you don't make it from a plan or anything like that. You start with the 3D view in the curly brackets and duplicate it. So if you don't have it, click on the house to make it. Yeah. And then you should be able to see that in your list of 3D views. You'll see you have 3D in the parentheses. Yeah. Duplicate that. Yeah. Okay, so then if I go to my page, oops, my blank page, then I can drag AXO1, so I've given it a new name, so I know what it is, and I'm going to click and drag to place that on the sheet just like any other view. But what you need to be careful of, if you go back to that view and start just doing what you would normally do, orbiting around and looking at things in different ways, then go back onto your page, what's going to happen? It's changed. Right? Because that view has changed. AXO1 has changed. So if you want it to go on a page, you need to leave it the way it is. You can't start orbiting and changing the view because that's going to change the view on the page. And so people often ask, how do you save a view or how do you export a view? With Revit, you don't need to. The views are always live, but they're always there and ready to go onto a page. So they've given you an option, if you forget that it's on a page, just to make sure that it doesn't change, you can lock it. So this view I know is on my page, so if I then go down to the button next to the glasses, you've got this button, say, it's like a little house with a padlock on it, down on your view control bar. And if you click on that, you'll see you've got the option at the top there, Save Orientation and Lock View. So now, I can't click on the cube, I can't shift and middle mouse button to orbit, it's locked. I can zoom in and out, but that's not going to change the way it appears on the sheet. So that's a really, really useful option for 3D views when they're on a page, so that you don't go forgetting and orbiting and changing.
Where was it down the bottom?
So you need to be in the view. It's the one that looks like a house with a padlock on it,
Okay.
next to the glasses.
So do I do a right click there?
Just left click on it,
Left.
and you'll see.
Unlocked 3D view.
Yeah, so click Save Orientation and Lock View at the top.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that locks it. Yep. So now I want to make more views that are similar to that. So like I said, there are two options for making new views. You can duplicate that 3D view, or if you rename it, so I'm just going to right click on the 3D in the curly brackets and go to rename, and I'll call this AXO 2. So now I don't have any view with that name anymore, 3D in parentheses. And that means if I click on the house, it'll make a new one with that name. That's the most confusing thing about making this kind of view.
So what you just did, you renamed the 3D,
Yeah?
and then when you clicked on the house, you created a new one.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right, yeah. So that's made it with the default settings, and that can be a handy option because you'll often change some of the properties of this view, and you might hide things and forget what you've hidden. And so to get back to the initial setup, the best way is just give that view a new name and then use the house to make a new view with the default settings. So what I want to do now though is go to AXO 2, and I'm just going to use a section box. So in the view properties here, it's got 3D view and properties, so I could just go down to find the section box, turn that on, and then using that box that comes up around my building, click and drag on the sides to bring this in. And this is actually one of the best things about Revit compared to a program you probably know about called CAD, which is a fantastic program in many ways. I used to teach it a bit. I still play around with it, but I think Revit generally has slightly better technology, but ArchiCAD still is a great program. And So ArchiCAD though doesn't have an option like this. You can do partial 3D views, but you do it in a different way. So this is one of the nice things Revit gives you. And so I can easily bring that section box down to cut away the top of the building, which might be good to show the ground floor. And then if I select this bulkhead here, instead of using the section box to remove that, I might just hide it by right-clicking and hiding normally. So you can do a combination of the section box and also hiding things. I've got a light left over there, so I can also hide that. So don't think you need to use one or the other. They work really well together, hiding and the section box. And the section box itself can be hidden. So if I right-click there and then go to hide in view elements, obviously then the section box. It depends. Normally it won't. When you print, it should disappear. But it's usually just nice to see it without. Yeah. So so that can go onto the page, and so if your views are matching, so here I'm going to set the angle the same as the other view, and then I'm also going to lock this one. So with the little, not in the view, you have to have the view open. So go to the 3D view, and then you'll see down on the view control bar where you've got all the buttons at the bottom. There's a button next to the glasses that looks like a house with a little padlock over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you show me quickly where the section box is?
Oh yeah, so in your view property, so over here it's got to say 3D view at the top, and then if you scroll down, you'll see it's in the second area, and you've got section box there. Yeah. So it's got to tick that. So it's only in 3D views, you won't see that in plans or anything. So back to my sheet. If I drag that view across, it will actually give me a little line, with any luck, there we go, to show me when it's lined up with the view above. So that can be a nice thing to have those in line. Totally optional, but handy option.
Because it's a live drawing, whatever I add to the original drawing, it will.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's good to think about that because you can set up most of your views. Yeah, that's right, and they always are. That's the whole point. So, yeah, so of course I can go and maybe I'll just do something very quickly. So I can put something into plan. So I'll just go and quickly put in a piece of furniture that I've already got loaded. Should take a few seconds to find something. So I'll just put a table in down here. And so now if I go to my sheets, in the plan, you can see the table of course, and in all of my views, including the 3D views, I can see it as well. Okay, so those are the axonometric views, so you need 2 more of those, and you could do really zoomed in views at different scales, and that could be really useful for interiors. So if you have another copy, and I'll rename this and call it Axo Reception. Now, to change the section box, I've hidden it, so you can always click on the light bulb to reveal hidden, and you can even adjust the section box in that mode. So while it's hidden, you can still adjust it, and that's something AutoCAD, for example, won't let you do. It's a really nice thing that Revit lets you do now. Well, it's been like this for a while. Yeah, that might do. So again, clicking on the light bulb now to go out of reveal mode, then I'll see the finished result. And so because that's showing a more detailed area, I can make the scale there larger. I know people say smaller when it's a smaller number, but it's actually going to be bigger, so I say larger. So I'm going to go to 1 to 50 and go back to a sheet, and that of course can be dragged on just like any of the others. They don't all have to be the same angle. You can do different angles, of course, as well. And so the only other type of view you need then, apart from the axos and the other ones we've looked at, are the perspective views. So remember, only 2 of them need to be rendered. So you of course make perspective views using cameras.
When you say rendered,
Yeah.
do you mean rendered in Revit or?
No, you can do Photoshop rendering.
Because I've already done it for my
Yeah.
last project.
Yeah.
So
You can do Photoshop rendering, but I'd highly recommend trying to do some 3D rendering with Revit, because for the second assignment you'll need to, and so I just want to get some practice with that. So I'll just make a new perspective view so that I have another one, and so there are some nice things you can play with a perspective. You can of course hide things just like you can in any other view. You can set the graphics to these different options: hidden line, shaded, realistic, and so on. And then we'll go further with this later on, but if you go to graphic display options, there are other options that you can try. And a nice one I like is ambient shadows. So you get these soft shadows, which can be effective in those views. And they actually can look good even with hidden line. So you can get nice different graphics just going into that option there. So I'll show you a lot more options you can go into there. But so when you click on that visual style button, basically where you have those presets, you can always again go to graphic display options and you get a lot more options there. So now I'm going to go onto yet another sheet. So I'll make a new sheet. And I'm going to place that new perspective, and notice I've got these views: 3D view 1, 2, 3 and 4. And so just like the other 3D views, it's really going to help you a lot if you give them sensible names. So I'm going to double click on the first one, and so this is, I suppose, the display area. So I'm going to right click there, go to rename and call it what it is, instead of just leaving it as 3D view 1 and 3D view 2 and so on. So 3D view 2, well, that's really the reception. Third view 3 is reception as well. Let's say counter, and so on. So 3D view 4 is view through transition or something.
So all those there are under the 3D view you say them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I had a few that I've given names to before as well. So now if I go back onto the page, I can put some of those views on. So maybe this one, and the one I just created. But notice how they're quite different sizes. So you control the size of perspectives in a very different way to all of the other views. Like, so plans, sections, elevations, and all of those axonometric views have a scale, 1 to 100, 1 to 50, and so on. But perspectives don't, because obviously in a perspective view, things in the foreground are bigger than things in the distance. So that tells you that there's no uniform scale. There's no such thing as 1 to 50 for a perspective. It just doesn't make sense. So you set the scale or the size on the sheet very differently. You just select the page, or select the view on the page, and then you'll see up the top you get an option there for size crop. So if you click on size crop, then you can type in a size. But if you don't change the option at the bottom, that's going to change the field of view. So it's just like stretching the sides like we were doing before. So if you're just trying to change the size on the page, then usually you should choose the scale option at the bottom, lock proportions, and then type in the size. So we know here I'm on A2. The size I've got is not too bad actually, but I just want to make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to change the height there to, I'll just make it slightly bigger, so 170. So notice how it says lock proportions, which means if I change the height, the width is going to change in proportion automatically. And the same if I change the width, then the height will change. So I only need to change one of those. If I click apply, I can see the change without even closing this dialog box. So it's made it that size that I've typed in. And then I can move this. So the only problem now is that this tag is going on top of my view.
Yeah.
So if I select the viewport, that's going to move the view and the tag. To move the tag by itself, the easiest way is just to make sure you've got nothing else selected. And then you should be able to select the tag separately. And you can just drag it. So,
how did you get, what did you do to change the size
oh,
of that?
size crop up here. So I'll do that with this one. So here, okay, so that view, well actually this one maybe I want that to be smaller now, think about it. So again I'm just going to select it, go back to size crop, and I'll change the height to, also I'm going to do the width. So I'm going to make the width, so again scale lock proportion and change the width to 200, I'll try it. And then again the height will automatically change. And click OK, and yeah, that's better. So now can move the viewport, which will move the tag with it, and then come back and move the tag separately. It's funny, if you want to change the length of that line, you can't do it when the tag is selected. You need to select the viewport, and then you get the grid to stretch it. It's just one of those weird things, but it works. Yeah. Yeah, look, the tags are pretty awful. So, I mean, for construction drawings, they're okay. But when you're doing design drawings, normally you'll just hide all of these labels anyway and do them in InDesign. Because InDesign's going to give you much better fonts and all the graphics things. So you can always just select the viewport and then over here just go to no title to turn it off altogether. But for this project, because I'm assuming not everyone can use InDesign, it's totally acceptable to just do this with Revit. So now what I want to do is match the size of this view to this one. I can't match both the width and the height, but I can at least match the width. So we know, looking at size crop, that the width here is 200 mil. So if I select the view below, go to size crop, change it to scale, and then I can make the width there 200, and the height will be whatever. So then the width then is going to match exactly the one above. Lining them up is a real pain. I wish they would give you a tool, but they haven't yet. So there are ways. It's annoying. You can line the tags up, not a problem. It just does that for you. And the end of the tag as well, no worries. But to get the views exactly in line, you've got to use little tricks like drawing in a detail line. So you can do that, and then just move your view across, and it will snap to that. Then you have to go back, and if you're using the tags, drag it back across. It's a bit tedious, but oh, so I did that quickly. So it's just on the Annotate tab, and then you've got Detail Line. And because you're going to delete it, it doesn't really matter which line style you use. You can just draw any line. And yeah, it's just a straight line that you're using to align those. Yep. Okay, so I've got my two perspectives that aren't rendered. So I've just selected them and I'm using the arrows on the keyboard to move them up and down. So arrows up and down, left and right are really useful for this. And then I need two rendered perspectives. So you've got a couple of options. When you render with Revit, I was showing you that I haven't rendered recently, so it's not going to show it to me, but I have rendered this previously. And then you can use Save to Project, which, if you remember from last week, will save the render in this renderings category. So I've saved a couple of versions of that. They're not the best, but they're saved at least. And so if they're saved there, you can drag them from there onto your sheet. Now, the way you adjust the size is a bit different to these other perspectives. You need to select them and then activate the view, and then you can either select the image and type in a size. So if you want to type in an exact value like I was doing before, I could type in, again, say 200 for the width, and then the height will change automatically. Or you can even just click and drag to stretch. So again, to go back to the page, you can right click and then deactivate view. So that's only if you've saved them though in the renderings category. If you've rendered them and then either exported them, or, so just remember when you go to render, you have that option to export next to Save to Project there. So remember from last week, that'll let you save the file out as a PNG or a JPEG, and that's usually the best option. Or alternatively, if you've done the render in the cloud, like I have here, then you need to download the image and again save it. Now that should be downloading. I hate the way Chrome downloads. It doesn't give you a thing to choose where you're saving it automatically, so it should just go into my downloads folder here though. Not yet. Okay, let's just do that again. What's going on? I'll try it up here. Should be doing it. Okay, I like the way, this is the thing, Chrome's great for some things, but here it's being a bit annoying, so I can always go back to Internet Explorer and view it there. So if I just refresh my page, it's going to have the same as what I had in Chrome. And I often do this, I'll have two or three browsers open just to get something working, because all these new browsers like Chrome and Firefox, they say are great for everything, actually are not always great. And what's that awful Microsoft one, Edge? It's terrible.
Oh, yeah, it's so
It's
annoying.
useless, yeah.
Keep my default at work.
Oh, yeah,
We don't even have Edge at work. It's still on
yeah,
Internet.
yeah. No, the inmates are running the asylum. These big IT companies have just, people with a few screws loose in the executive level making these crazy decisions about things.
I don't know.
I think they make it. I think they just
I don't know. No, they're deciding. They're saying, we want a new browser. Everyone hates Internet Explorer. We want to replace it. And, I'm talking about Microsoft and Apple.
Microsoft.
They're just as bad as each other. And it's all marketing. So they've decided that Internet Explorer has a bad name. So they're not. It does. Well, it is bad at some things, but for some things, it's still the best. And like I said, it's better than Chrome and Firefox for a lot of things.
It's the system that all of our work
Yep.
stuff
Yep. Heaps of things still work
is based on.
best in Internet Explorer. It's crazy that they're not supporting it. The reason that it's gone bad is because Microsoft don't want to support it because it got a bad name for some reason. And so they brought in this stupid Edge, which is even worse. And yeah. And so Anyhow, so that should be downloading. I don't know why it's not. Oh, here we go. Now it is. So you can see in Internet Explorer, no problem. It gives you at least a prompt so that you can save something, which, you know, is kind of essential. And there we are. So that's there now. And like I can do, you know, I started doing IT studies years and years ago, and things were much better. You had much smarter people making the decisions 20 years ago than you do now. I hate to say it, but it's just so obvious. So when you go now to insert an image, so I did that quickly, but you can go to the page and click on the image button to bring an image in directly. And so if you, here we go, just getting to your downloads folder from here is an absolute pain as well, and I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to copy it to another folder. It's another genius decision some person has made at Microsoft. So I'm going to just copy it from downloads to somewhere I can get to more easily. That'll do. And now I can go and insert that image. So these are all things I'm sure you can work out. And so then I can stretch it, but notice that I don't get a tag the way I have with the others. So now, it's not essential. If you don't want to do the tags like this, I don't mind if you just put text in. From the Annotate tab, you can just go to text and draw text in. But I know a lot of people wonder about this because they sometimes will want the tags. The way you do it, it's a bit strange, but you make a new view type, and this is the very last thing I'm going to show you. And it's something that you'll see later will be extremely useful. This thing called a drafting view. So a drafting view is essentially just a standalone view. So I'm going to set the scale there to 1:1, or I can even go to custom and just click OK. And then if I go to the Insert tab and then Image, I can place the image here, and so then I can drag from this new category that I now have, Drafting Views. They made it for detailing, but you can use it for this as well. Delete the image from there, and now from Drafting Views I can drag that across, and it's got a tag. Just one of those little tricks, but
How did you create the drafting?
So it's on the View tab. You've got the option there. Like I said, it's entirely optional, but if you really do want that tag, that's how you do it. And so that I can deactivate it and get the tag. The only annoying thing is that no matter how you do it, when you place the perspective on, it gives you the scale. Now, for this project, I don't expect you to know how to change the tags, but there is a way. We'll do that when you look at your next assignment. So you can do a special tag that won't show the scale, but again, for this project, it's totally okay if you have 1:1 there for your perspective views. Yeah, they will. That's it. So because you won't have a tag that doesn't show the scale, so you can either go to no title or just leave it with 1:1. That's okay. So that's it. That's all of your types.
Can you quickly show us how to render a report?
Oh, you mean to put it? Yes. Oh, you mean to do a material? Yeah, I won't record it.